Happy Sundays with Cinnamon.
Hey.
Today I would like to talk about being patient with our process because I have been such an instant gratification girl and I want it and I want it now. I want it yesterday when
Who doesn't? I want it the day before yesterday.
And so how do we create patience?
First, by saying to be patient. Because when a person is creating impatience, they're impatient. And so when they believe that they have a right to be impatient because the life circumstance will always prove, see, if they weren't stalling in that lane, I could get over. And see, there's always a reason to be impatient. So if you get away from the impatient, and get to I'm throwing away my patience, I'm creating impatience, then you have power. Because if you're pointing to why you're impatient, you're making the story that will support your impatience, because you're right. And 10 people behind you will be saying, yeah. Tell the son of a gun to move. And so you're stuck being right with your impatience. When you say, wow, I'm tossing away my patience over this, well, then you can breathe and relax and say your pathways or say your prayers or sing a song or do your grocery list or whatever it is that can help you to endure. And love endures all things. And it may seem trite to compare that to, that's in Corinthians in the Bible, although it isn't trite at all, because you must use those biblical terms in your pathways and all that you know of consciousness moment to moment on anything that you might even call trivial or trite. It applies, love applies to every aspect of life, every aspect. In Seattle, when I lived in Seattle, I went from Albuquerque, which was sun, to it was like an act of divine purposefulness when the sun came out in Seattle. And so I went from one extreme to the other, and in both extremes, I was just celebrating when it rained in Albuquerque and celebrating when the sun came out in Seattle, because if you create acceptance, patience, if you will, with what is in life, you don't struggle with life, because it is what it is. Who moved to Seattle? I didn't move there at gunpoint. I knew from people that I had known who lived there and said, I couldn't take it. I was depressed all the time. Well, I knew that they were depressing themselves. Otherwise, you could see how that rain was creating such lush gardens, green like I've never seen, and flowers that were totally amazing because it was constantly raining and so forth. So you dress for the weather. It's just, life is so much easier. And it becomes simple when you've practiced enough. It's not easy at first. It is always simple. Is just is. And if you deal with it in a loving way and you don't toss away your patience with it, then it just becomes your what is. That, oh, that's life. Oh yeah, here it is again. Oh, that doesn't meet my models. Oh, that does. And it's all about models.
And trusting that whatever shows up is here for our spiritual growth, not against us. So let's talk about language, since you are saying, you're throwing away your peace.
I'm the language Nazi.
Yes, you are. And you're creating peace and all that.
Because the language is constantly going on in your head. Whatever story you have, I like to use when people cut you off in traffic. That story, no good, blah, blah, blah. It's instantaneous. There's a program, and you're running it. So if you change the program and run that, and the first thought is, oh, bless their hearts, I hope they don't get into an accident, I hope no one is hurt. You know, if you run a story that creates peace and blesses, why would you not want to switch gears in that way and speak in your mind in ways that create
Well,
peace?
let me tell you why.
Oh, right then.
And this isn't my story anymore, although this is the story for a lot of people in our Living Love class. It's not the real world. No one talks like this. You're going to look like a freak.
Well, I would say I talk like this in my head, and I don't need to be concerned about the way other people are speaking as much as how I'm speaking, because they're not in my head. They're not hearing me reprogram, and so I can use my life as an example of, I can say to people, I used to think exactly that way. And I've just trained myself to think differently. Then, if they're the least bit interested in how they can create peace by simply changing the mental verbiage, then I continue. Otherwise, bless your heart is all that comes out of me. Because I cannot, and I will not, attempt to rescue people from their life contracts, from their challenges that will help them to grow.
And that's been one of my, my best friend will say, you're being a hammerhead, because I want people to get it when I can see something so clearly, and I create addiction with that often.
Mm-hmm. And there are no good addictions.
No.
Addictions are the only cause of suffering. No exceptions.
No exceptions.
The kids' pathway, that second pathway, is that no exceptions is the bottom line.
And you know what people will say to that? Oh, okay, so if you're starving in the street, of course you're gonna be suffering.
No, you don't need to be suffering.
If you're raped, you're gonna be suffering.
You don't need to suffer. You need to experience the pain, which will keep you from suffering. That doesn't mean the pain isn't intense. You're talking to somebody that knows about rape for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
Incest, all that is just daily rape, or however frequently it was, for anyone. So, and I suffered for years till I was in my mid-20s, because I did not have the training to know that there's a huge difference between a pain and suffering. There's that little adage, that ditty about jumping from the frying pan into the fire. So the frying pan is the pain. The suffering is when you jump into the fire. So you want to avoid the pain in the frying pan, so you jump out into the fire, and you really burn up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you are willing to experience the pain of life, like childbirth, for some of us, childbirth was excruciating, exquisitely excruciating, because what we got at the end usually was something marvelous. Some people had the challenge of losing their children. At the same time, the pain of going through it was pain, intense, excruciating, if you will, pain at times. And suffering is so much. For instance, when you don't forgive, like in my case, incest, when you don't forgive and you stretch that pain out to suffering, you drag that with you the rest until you choose to forgive. And some people do that all the days of their lives.
Well, and most people think it takes time to forgive. So if
It takes one moment. It takes this here now moment. And that's why when people ask me, well, how long did it take you to become this clear? I say, I'm not going to be insulting by saying it takes this amount. You could do it in 5 minutes where it took me 5 years. So comparison is a killer. Don't compare yourself. Not even to yourself. It just be in the moment, deciding moment to moment whether you will forgive. I'm not willing yet, or I am.
So if someone came in here right now and murdered your grandchild, where would you go?
To the depths of pain. That would be pain like I've not yet experienced. I've experienced cancer, I've experienced the death of my husband, I've experienced a lot of excruciating pain. That would be one that's unimaginable, and I would focus on breathing into it and being so grateful that this boy or girl, because I have a girl, was in my life to bless me for the amount of time, and I would be avoiding serious suffering by forgiving the murderer.
Immediately.
And Jesus, well, how much do you want to suffer? Of course, immediately. The pain is enough. I want to add suffering to it. And Jesus, I emulate Jesus with all my heart. Jesus is on the cross being murdered. saying, forgive them. They know not what they do. This person just
But
killed
you're
an
going to get a lot of people and say, but that's Jesus.
And yeah, and what we're here to do is to emulate the Christ consciousness. And by that, I don't exclude Buddhists or Muslims, or that to me is their way of honoring the beloved, the God in us. So yeah, that's Jesus. And why would we not want to honor Jesus by living in a way that Jesus ascribed as the way?
Mm-hmm.
I am the way, the truth, and the light.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, well, sorry about you, honey. You're unique and an enigma. see, that makes sense. This other, no, you must suffer. That makes no sense to me.
Well, yes. It doesn't,
Do
but the
the
majority
math.
of people do it.
Exactly.
And they think you're crazy if you suggest anything differently.
And that's what it puts a halo around the fact that we're not willing to step up and be a target for those who think differently, and to be accepting of that difference.
Wait a second. We need to say that again.
Okay, we want to be one of the masses because otherwise we would have to step up and be uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to be common than uncommon. And so you just have to be willing to be a target, so to speak. Let them aim their differences at you and then deflect by honoring the differences.
Yes. Okay. Love that.
Because I've taught Jews and Muslims and Christians, and please God, I've taught them with my life and with living love principles. Living love. Get it?
Mm-hmm.
Living love. It's not a class or a philosophy. It's a way of being in the world that helps you cope with the enigma, the mystery of life. Because how do you explain away child molestation or incest or muscular dystrophy or any of this stuff? It's a mystery. And God is in it with us. And the magic is to say, yes, I don't understand this, and truly it sucks as far as I can see, and just tell the truth to God. When I'm in prayer, that's the conversation that I have with God. Are you kidding me? I say sometimes, take on another class, and then I totally surrender. I let my mind run it. I honor that the mind goes there, and then I laugh and say, okay, back where you belong, in the box.
So do you always call God God? Do you care if people...
My dearest beloved, I call God sometimes.
And God is what?
God is love. God is the pure essence of all that is perfect.
And what do you say to people who don't want to use the word God?
Use the word carpet. It's not for me to say who God is. Use creator, use universe, use rig.
Because I like the word God too,
Yeah.
and I
explain
am not
to
religious.
People, when I'm speaking to people who are not religious, I say to them, please understand that I make myself comfortable with the word God. It just is a comfort to me. And whatever comforts you in the way of your spiritual devotion, let that be what you share with the world, with all your heart. Because someone shares with me whatever their spiritual focus is with all their heart, I'm just in awe of
It just seems that so many people in the spiritual community don't like the word God, so they want you to use every other word besides God.
That's because they have got themselves stuck in an old program of God in the sky, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, or a parent or a grandparent who hammers God into their existence and makes them afraid of God. God-fearing is such a... they applaud God-fearing people. My heart goes out to God-fearing people. I'm a God-loving person, and I'm not afraid of God. Because God provides me with everything I need to be whole and complete. and supports me in it. I know that God is in everything with me, so that I don't need to choose to suffer. And I have experienced pain that when my husband passed away, he was in the bed, and my brother-in-law, his brother, who was devoted to him, was on the other side of the bed. And I looked at him and said, Nate, God knows better than I do how strong I am in this moment. And he said, me too, baby. And then when his wife passed, I was in the hospital with him. And I said, Nate, God knows that you're much stronger than you're experiencing in this moment. Now call it up. And he accepted that as well. And I'm so blessed that he and I had that same experience about two people that we were devoted to and who loved us consummately. And now we're together alive, supporting each other and being our big selves while we're alive.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Wow, we just had a 16-minute conversation.
Wonderful. And that's good enough.
Yes,
Right, folks?
yes. We could go on, and we probably will once
Come back. Just keep coming back. It never ends.
Sundays are always here.
Yeah. If it's Sunday, it's cinnamon.
I love you. Bye.
Same to you, honey.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.